I am back with my Mrs. Quilty bundle. It's been a wild ride this October with honeymoons and trips and everything, but I am back. We are gonna dive in and see how to use this bundle. This is the bundle that I got with my first Mrs. Quilty box, and so there are 12 fat quarters in here. And my response that I got on a lot of it was a lot of you seemed like you were interested in not so much the projects in the box, but maybe seeing how the fabrics can be used elsewhere. And so if you do decide to give Mrs. Quilty a try for either yourself or another brand new quilter in your life, this intro box was fabulous. It's got 12 fat quarters. It's got a booklet with some simple projects in it, which Mrs. Quilty has intro videos for all of those projects, should that be what you're looking for. But today, we are gonna use these 12 fat quarters and mash them up with our good friends from Fabric Cafe. So I've got the two different fat quarter books and I looked at both of them. So let me show you. This is Fat Quarter Quilting Fun. We've got some great patterns on there. And so that's what that one's got going on. But this one, we've got Fat Quarter Quilt Treats. This is the one by Donna. And after looking at it and going, well, these are all nice. These are all pretty simple. I could do these quick. Which one was I drawn to? This one. So we're gonna do Shine. I'm gonna figure out my darks, my mediums, and my lights. And I'm gonna use these fabulous Mrs. Quilty fabrics to turn them into a whole quilt top. So if you're not interested in doing the pot holder or the placemat or the more simple little projects, the block of the month kind of sampler thing, this is what you can do. So let me start separating these out into dark, medium, and lights, figure out how many of each I need, and then we'll get to cutting. Okay, so it wanted 5 light fat quarters. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and that includes one for the binding. So if I decide to do their binding with their fat quarters, maybe I will this time just to utilize it and not have a sad one left over, sad lonely fat quarter. This one is what's going to be my binding for sure. This one's going to be the outside border because it needs a light one, and I think compared to the other ones, that's going to be the lightest. We're going to have some very florally borders. Here's my medium. So it had 3 mediums, one for half square 2, one for something in block A, and then one for border number 2. So I'm going to look at those, and then here are my dark ones. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 dark ones. So 2 different polka dots and 2 different florals. So now it's time to get cutting, and it seems like there's a whole bunch of different cutting instructions for the Shine quilt. So I'm going to cut a little bit on recording and then cut the rest, and we'll come back and see what we have from this Mrs. Quilty Fabric Cafe combo going on. So the cutting that you missed out on was just squares, squares, and a whole lot more squares because, as you saw, this is going to be a star block, so lots of half square triangles involved. So these are my light ones, my mediums, and then my darks are here. These are a little bit smaller squares that I think are going to do that 4 patch. These are the center of the stars. I've got my light and my dark in there. And then this is where the borders got interesting. It had me cut... I would have picked a different one for the center had I known this was how I was going to end up. But these 2 are the inner border, so it's the first border is half dark, half light, which matches these here. And then I've got my next border 2 and border 3 here. I didn't cut my binding yet because I didn't see that cutting instruction, or maybe I just flipped past it. But as you can see, I'm going to figure out how these all pair up because we've got half square triangle coming out the wazoo. So I'm going to get thread on my machine and get to it. So all of my half square triangles are squared up and beautiful. So now it's time to make the blocks. So I've got my dark center block and my light center block. So the dark is going to end up being the points on all of them to make the star. Let me make sure you're still in frame. Oop. So there's that guy. And there we are. So the dark, medium dark, and then there we go. And then now we're going to do light with light. And I like how the polka dots do end up in different spots for the placement. I have a whole nother set of these squares that for whatever reason they had me cut another set. I don't know if I was supposed to like mix and match them. Maybe I was, so then they all didn't have the same points, but oh well. And there's that there. So there's our blocks. And then for our corners here, this one is going to have the light ones, and this one's gonna have the medium ones. They're all mixed up in my stacks, so I gotta go back and forth. And then here, and then here. Okay, so it's gonna, I have 6 of each block. So 6 of this version, 6 of this version, and then when they're all put together, it'll make the little 4 patch in here. And so I'm going to start making these blocks so then I can make a little quilt top and figure out how the heck these borders are supposed to work. So I'll meet you at my sewing machine so we can sew some star blocks. So here is how the lighter block turned out, and here is the darker block. So now what I need to do is put them in rows of 3. So it's going to go 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and then alternate for 4 rows. So there's going to be 3 rows across, 4 rows down, and then it's going to be figuring out the borders, and then it'll be done. Now that our quilt blocks all are done, let's take a break and talk about the sponsor of this video, Mrs. Quilty. So Mrs. Quilty is a subscription box for quilters of all levels, whether this is going to be your first quilt project or one of hundreds and thousands. Mrs. Quilty has options for everybody. Mrs. Quilty is a subscription box that's available once a month, or if you need to pause or skip a few months because your projects are piling up. It's flexible and has so many options and comes with such great stuff in it. So my box, which you see here, came with the fabric that I used to create that quilt, a little magazine that has 4 projects that you can choose to do if you want to kind of do a little bit here and a little bit there to try something out new, or you can use the bundle to do whatever you'd like, and just like I did, create a little quilt top out of it. And it also came with some fun gifts like a ruler, it's a 6.5-inch square, as well as some fun pins. So if you are not new to the quilting game, consider this as an option for somebody you want to inspire to quilt in your life, whether for this holiday season or kick off the new year with a new hobby that you are dying to learn. In the description box below, you'll find my code to get 20% off your first box with Mrs. Quilty, and I hope you give it a try, and you'll have to let me know what you think. And now, let's get back to putting this quilt together. here we are with our finished shine quilt from the Fat Quarter Quilt Treats, which I made using my fabric bundle from my Mrs. Quilty subscription box. And I have to say, I am quite pleased with how this turned out. I know when I unboxed this, some people were concerned about how there was no contrast, there was really no difference between the prints, but I think it turned out really cool. I'm really happy with how these turned out, and I think it's pretty cool because when I look at it in the viewfinder here, these almost look like X's and then a little star. So it's kind of fun to see how the different colors pick up in different ways and how it all came together. And so I know many of you are probably wondering what it's like to sew with Mrs. Quilty fabric. And I actually didn't think it was that bad at all. I thought it was a better quality than your box store fat quarters that you get there. And I didn't have any issues sewing it together. The only thing I came across was when I went to put the borders on, they were kind of unraveling a little bit more than I usually like, but I don't feel like that's much of a deterrent because I have heard people say the same thing about K-Facet from Free Spirit Fabrics, and sometimes Kona unravels a lot on them. So I didn't find that as much to be a major concern for me when it came to the fabric quality. Like I know sometimes you can get fabric where you hold it up to light and you can see right through it. I didn't feel that with this, and it still felt like a good quality, and I am quite pleased with how I was able to use this Mrs. Quilty bundle. So I'm excited that I was able to show you that if you are not super into the little projects that your Mrs. Quilty box provides you, you can still take your bundle and turn it into something fabulous, whether it is a fabric cafe pattern or something else super fun. So just remember, Mrs. Quilty is an awesome subscription box for both quilters of new and many years. So just remember, this video is sponsored by Mrs. Quilty, and so if you are looking for a subscription box that has a little bit of everything, whether you are a beginner quilter or somebody that's more advanced, there's options in them for everybody. Whether you use the bundle again for your projects, which they have videos for all of those intro projects from their first box on their YouTube channel. So if you are interested in those, be sure to check them out. Otherwise, you can use your bundle and create something new and fabulous of your very own. So follow the link in the description below if you are interested in Mrs. Quilty for yourself or as a gift for somebody else this holiday season. So you can get 20% off your first box and choose how often you would like to receive your box and start creating something of your very own. I'll see you again with this quilt top when it is time to get it all quilted up and turn it into a finished project so that we can see how Mrs. Quilty fabric does with my long arm and binding. And so we'll see you again soon for that, and have a very quilty day.